Hello everyone, and welcome to this edition of Transit News Magazine. This month we're focusing all our attention on Hurricane Sandy, a weather event the likes of which our region has never seen before, and one that devastated so many homes and lives in our viewing area. I'm Pete Palomero.
One of the hardest hit areas was here in Staten Island, and as you can see behind us, this tanker washed up onto the road because of a tidal surge. Commuters from Lower Manhattan to Long Island suffered loss of electricity, damaged homes, and mass transit shutdowns. I'm Ozzie Cruz.
But you can't keep New Yorkers down, and people by the thousands lent a hand to those in need. And MTA employees, in a Herculean effort, got the city moving again.
We have team coverage of how New York City Transit and other MTA agencies pumped the water out of the tunnels, fixed tracks, and got the buses rolling again. As you can see, part of New York's river's edge is just a few feet above sea level, and as the water came up, there was just no stopping it.
And down in Lower Manhattan, salt water rushed into the newly renamed Hugh L. Carey Tunnel, flooding it right to the top. Now our news director Winston Mitchell and cameraman Chris Abermitis were on the scene to check out the damage.
Hurricane Sandy devastated the tri-state area and temporarily immobilized the city's transportation system. In particular, the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel experienced major flooding.
Behind you now, you'll see approximately 6,000 feet of water, approximately 20 million gallons of water. We're right now in the process of having the water removed. We're starting now in Brooklyn. We've been using vac trucks until we get everybody set. Vac trucks are sucking out about approximately 4,000 gallons at a time, at a clip. We have pumps that are pumping 1,000 gallons per minute.
The Bridges and Tunnels crew worked around the clock to remedy the situation.
The officers, the managers, the supervisors, the sergeant lieutenants, I cannot say how phenomenal they've been. They have worked tirelessly to make sure our place is secure and safe and to try to get everything up and running as soon as possible.
Every day, 45,000 cars pass through this tunnel. But thanks to Hurricane Sandy, it's now filled with 20 million gallons of water. The dewatering was so huge, the Army Corps of Engineers also supported the MTA in their efforts.
The setup that you see behind us is the command and control center for the unwatering mission, which is basically the removal of water from places that it's not supposed to be. So we've got a team, they're called the National Unwatering Team. They're in New York, they're from the Rock Island district, and they're here to help with our mission, which has been assigned to us by FEMA, to help support local and state efforts to unwater infrastructure in and around Lower Manhattan.
It's important for commuters to understand this restoration process is a delicate one that requires patience and time to be done correctly.
What I'd like the public to know is we're doing the best we can. I mean, we have help from the government, from MTA headquarters. I have to thank them. I have to thank Joe Loda, Jim Ferrara, Jim Fortunato. I have to thank everyone. Everyone has tried to help us. Everyone. There's only a certain amount that can be done right away.
The same water that flooded the tunnel also took a toll on Lower Manhattan and one of Transit's new stations. When Sandy first hit, this was the water line here at the South Ferry Station. As you can see behind me, the water has still filled the station with millions of gallons of water.
That station was completely full of water from track level all the way up past the ceiling into the ductwork. Every part of that station was involved. There's considerable damage. There'll be a considerable assessment that has to take place before we know exactly what we have to replace and where.
The South Ferry Station will take a while longer to get up and going. But back at the Hugh Carey Tunnel, once the water was removed, over 2,300 lights had to be drained and replaced in order for drivers to have a safe passage.
The people on the bench are now stripping them down, washing them off with clean water to remove the salt water. Then they're rebuilding them, and then they bring them over to a bench and bench test them. After that, they're marked. They're put on the floor. When the other crew comes back, it's ready to reinstall. They load up the truck, go back into the tunnel, and reinstall.
I had an opportunity to speak with James Fortunato from MTA Bridges and Tunnels.
We got help from local contractors. We brought them in,
and the Army Corps of Engineers and the dewatering team from the Army Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard. It was just all hands on deck from many government agencies, many contractors that are experts in this area, and our own people that really worked around the clock for the last 3 weeks. Now, the Queens Midtown Tunnel, although it didn't get as much water as this, it took on enough water to keep that close, and we were able to get the Queens Midtown up a little bit quicker than the Brooklyn Battery, simply because the water problem there wasn't as great.
It's truly amazing to see that these tunnels are now clear of water just 3 weeks later, and it's a true testament to MTA employees and bridges and tunnels. I'm Winston Mitchell reporting for Transit News Magazine.
The Hugh Carey Tunnel was certainly not the only tunnel that flooded. From upper to lower Manhattan, the subway tunnels were inundated with millions of gallons of salt water that actually reached the ceiling in some stations.
To get commuters back to work and the city online, buses were used to form a bus bridge until subway lines can get back online one by one. Our reporter Trina was there to see the monumental movement of people.
Hurricane Sandy left her mark all over New York City. Subway tunnels and stations from the number 1 to the L line were filled with water.
Well, most of the tunnels was completely flooded out. I mean, completely, from the ceiling all the way through. See, the tunnel's designed like it's concave. So when you actually come into it, you see a glaze over it. And the further away the glaze is, the higher the water is actually in the tunnel.
In order to get the water out, a pump train had to be deployed. The concept is simple. The pump train removes water that has accumulated in the middle of a subway tube.
What happens, the train makes its way towards the water as deep as it can go, and then we lower pumps into the water. And the pump is being connected to a discharge line that rides along the catwalk out to the sewage or out to the rivers.
The damage to the subway system was extensive, reaching all the way up to Dyckman Street.
Millions of gallons, there was a lot of water. I mean, we're talking from here at Dyckman and up to 207th.
It took a team of transit workers night and day to dry out the station.
We had several pumps pumping out water for the last 2.5 days, cleaning out the station down to the track to get this station back in shape, so the other guys can get down there and work on the signals and track to clean out the rest of the stuff that was in the way.
After the water is pumped out, any damage to the tracks and signals had to be repaired.
Well, we had a flood, so we replacing the motors, checking everything on the stops, making sure everything is well lubricated, to try and get service back on the road.
Once the water was removed and crews could assess the damage, they could see they had their work cut out for them. What kind of damage have you seen?
Well, to our signal equipment, we had a lot of water in this signal heads. You have like transformers, all these stuff were flooded out. So we have to wait. We don't actually have power, electrical power on the line, so we have to wait until we power up to see, what's working and what's not.
Due to flooding in Lower Manhattan and no electricity, the MTA has implemented a bus bridge program to transport passengers from Brooklyn to Manhattan.
The first stop is Delancey and Bowery.
There was really no connection between downtown Brooklyn and Manhattan. So in connection with MTA bus and the Transit Authority buses, we created a bus bridge. Basically, there were 3 locations in downtown Brooklyn. One was at the Barclays Center, another one was at the J Street stop at Metrotech, and one was at U Street out in Williamsburg.
Implementing the bus bridge was an unprecedented logistical feat.
I think throughout the whole process, when we began to supplement, we got up to at least 370, 75 buses. It took a large degree of pre-planning, tabletop exercises, coordination between our support departments and our operations department, and most importantly, working with our unions to communicate properly with our rank and file employees, bus operators and mechanics.
Since the subway system moves 5.4 million people a day, and it takes 20 buses to equal the capacity of one train, This made for a very hectic commute.
I'm very happy to have the MTA working so hard for us.
Kind of good in a way because it gets me to work.
An army of transit workers were keeping everything organized and moving.
Most of the passengers are very agreeable and they understand the difficulties going around, and they've been pretty cooperative. I mean, the morning is a lot more volume, and they're averaging, I guess, probably less than 6 minutes loading a bus. People have to get to work, people have to get certain places, so they understand the difficulties that because Sandy caused, and they've been pretty agreeable.
The lines are so well organized today as opposed to yesterday, so they seem very satisfied.
After 2 days, the MTA Bus Bridge program has been a success. I'm Trina reporting for Transit News.
This is New York City Transit Staten Island Clifton shop. Water reached 8 feet into the shop building, and if this tanker were to wash further in, this whole rail yard would have been devastated.
Now, parts of the subway infrastructure in the Rockaways were also flooded, but there was a solution to bring limited shuttle service back to the area, even if it meant transporting subway cars by truck. Now, reporter Helle Anderson was out overnight to see firsthand just how impressive this move was.
Hurricane Sandy crippled the A-line. These trains are being lifted and put on trucks to be driven out to Far Rockaway.
The North Channel Bridge, which connects Howard Beach to Broad Channel, suffered severe damage, as did the tracks and supporting roadbed across the section of Broad Channel known as the Flats. There is no working signal system. The rails are twisted, and in some areas the supporting roadbed is completely washed away. The Broad Channel station was filled nearly to the platform edge with debris washed in by the storm, including a jet ski and a speedboat. In order to bring limited service to the Rockaways, lowboy trucks had to be used to move subway cars one by one.
Rockaways have been devastated. There's been an area of track that's been undermined from the storm, so we want to take 20 subway cars from here and bring them down to Rockaway Park.
It takes about an hour to lift one 80,000-pound car body. Adding to the difficulty of the operation, they were lifted from an elevated track in Ozone Park and gingerly placed on the lowboy flatbed trucks.
We have about 8 hourly employees, 4 up on the structure, 4 down in the street. And we have a rope attached to the car. They call them tag lines. So there'll be 4 people that can control the car when it's in the air.
Main thing we got to watch out for is the wind shifting the weight, and we got some power lines over here that we don't want to come in contact with. But pretty much it's straightforward. The crane operator's got control of the load. We give him the hand signals. He's able to move it into position. We lower it down onto the trucks and tie it down. It goes on its way.
Cruz had to work overnight in order to have a clear road to move these 80-foot lowboy trailers through the streets of the city.
We have a liaison with the police department. We're getting a police escort. So what happens from here? We're on Pitkin Avenue right now. We take it down to Cross Bay Boulevard, which is a few blocks down. It makes the left, and it's escorted straight down Cross Bay Boulevard, over the Cross Bay Memorial Bridge, down into Rock Park.
How many train cars are going to be transported, and where will the shuttle run?
We're transporting 20 R32 cars to operate a shuttle between Far Rockaway and Rockaway Park stations. The very purpose that we're doing this for is because the tracks are washed out between the Rockaways and the rest of the system. And so what we're doing is we're trying to establish a shuttle so that we can serve the passengers of the Rockaways with a train. There'll be bus that will connect to the rest of the system.
Once in the storm-ravaged Rockaways, it took some maneuvering of the lowboy into place to unload a car on the tracks while avoiding the barbed wire fence.
I think it went very well. We've done these a few times. First time was took a long time to set up, but we've gotten progressively better at this, and so you can see a lot of people involved and at great precision. One thing I did want to say is we're very proud of the fact that we're able to bring rail service to the Rockaways. These people have been devastated. You can see out here that just the state of how things are in this neighborhood. We felt that bringing rail service was important to not only the MTA, NYCT, but also to the passengers out here.
lots of problems down there on the peninsula, but on the flats leading over the Jamaica Bay, we actually had a couple sizable washouts in the track. All of that is being repaired as we speak. Our hope is that in a few months, or a month or so, or a few months it may take, we hope to have service back to the peninsula up and running. We provide a very essential service. We have to be there. And so maintaining this service, keeping it reliable, keeping it safe, that's what we're all about, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
These trains being loaded on the track is the beginning of shuttle service here in the Rockaways until the main line is repaired. I'm Helle Anderson reporting for Transit News.
I'm here at MTA headquarters, and I had a chance to speak with Joseph Loda about Hurricane Sandy. Prior to the storm, what preparations were in place?
Well, the Transit Authority in particular has been planning for hurricane events like this for years. A year ago, we actually had a live event with Hurricane Irene, and there were preparations made and actually implementation of shutting the system down. Things were learned from that event a little over a year ago that were implemented in connection with Hurricane Sandy.
How hard of a decision was it to shut down the entire subway system?
Well, we started talking about shutting down the system on the Thursday before, realizing that we have a protocol in place that when you get sustained winds of 39 miles per hour or more, we shut down the system. We need 12 hours to shut the entire system down. So what you look at is what's 0 hour, the hour in which the hurricane we think it's going to start, and you back up from there. We announced a closure of the system on Sunday morning, that it would shut down, begin shutting down at 7 o'clock on Sunday night and be fully locked up by 3 o'clock. Buses would actually shut down at 9 o'clock, and all of the buses would be in place by 3 a.m. as well.
Once the storm was over and you assessed the damage, what did you actually see?
We saw the surge coming up, and we realized that our worst case scenario was pretty much met in about 3 minutes. Each tunnel of the UL Carry Tunnel had 43 million gallons of water that we had to pump out. And I also realized that we were going to see a lot of damage in all of the tubes that we had in the subway system. And in fact, we ended up with 7 of our tubes full of water.
Did the system come back as quickly as you anticipated?
Quite honestly, I am surprised. Having seen the water and how it was coming up and the damage that it could possibly do, I was actually very worried that Monday night. It was absolutely amazing to see the men and the women of the Transit Authority begin work that Monday night. And by Tuesday morning, there was discussions about what could come back on Wednesday, what could come back on Thursday. I saw it in all parts of the MTA, not just the Transit Authority, Metro North, the Long Island Railroad, bridges and tunnels. Everyone was working as a team to get the system back up and running again.
What do you see in the future for the MTA?
The MTA showed to all of New York its strength, its grit, its ability to rebound in such adversity that we had with the hurricane. And I think it's representative of how important the MTA is.
Out there way beyond the Verrazano Bridge is the hard-hit area of Far Rockaway, where residents like those in neighboring communities went for weeks without electricity after the storm. And with food supplies running short and clothing lost, transit employees came out to help.
TWU Local 100 workers, along with other unions, brought provisions by the busload, proving that not only do we move the city, we also are members of the community. Here's Mark Groce with that story.
New York City Transit was able to bridge the gap in transportation. The Transport Workers Union bridged the gap between disaster and relief.
We knew that the Rockaways was going to be a tremendous area of need based on historical evidence. We look at Trina, we look at other areas that are vulnerable, and we know that those who don't have the resources usually get the hardest hit.
In the immediate aftermath of the storm, there were those who leaped into action.
I got on the phone with a lot of coalition members from Transit Forward Coalition, from TWU Local 100, from the UFT, from just regular community activists, and said we have to do something. So I opened up my law office and actually made my law office a drop-off site for contributions and supplies.
The volunteer organization known as Transit Forward came together to help a community ravaged by the worst storm in the region's history.
We were able to logistically organize folks from different areas of the city to come together to service the Rockaways.
After the storm, the focus of Transit Forward shifted to community outreach, as dozens of volunteers came out to help the residents of Far Rockaway, providing them with the basic necessities.
They were able to get a bus to our location with 35 volunteers, and we loaded up all the foods from the Jamaica side and brought it out here.
We've had volunteers out here distributing canned goods, food, hot meals, clothing, blankets to the residents.
Helping those who were suffering seemed like a monumental task, but they didn't let that stop them.
It's very overwhelming. Now I know the needs that, the things that they needed, and I'm glad that I'm here to help.
In addition to handing out food and provisions, Transit Forward made sure the community was aware of the services available to them.
Well, we're going to go door to door. We're going to knock on, make sure that people know that, one, we're out here, and just to service the community. So just making sure that people get the supplies that they need. If you look at what's going on out here, one, they've been neglected, and there's a need. And when there is a call to need, you just have to, be available and of service. So yeah, I'm definitely out here just doing my part.
The transit workers we're just part of the community, just like everyone else. I think that's often forgotten. We've had hundreds of members lose their homes, alongside of the rest of the city. And we just want people to understand that the transit workers are part of the city, and our administration, our current leadership is dedicated, and we want to change the way we're looked at in the city. We just want everyone to know that we're here for the people in New York City.
At the end of the day, we have to make sure that we are our brother's keepers, and that's what we're doing today.
The Transport Workers Union is used to transporting people, but now they're transporting hope. I'm Mark Groce reporting for Transit News.
The storm ravaged parts of Long Island, uprooting trees, downing power lines, and causing major havoc to our rail system.
Now, Ozzie, I had a chance to witness much of the damage sustained by the Long Island Railroad firsthand, and I have to say, LIRR employees deserve so much credit for working round the clock to bring service back to that hard-hit region. Everyone knew Sandy was going to be bad, but perhaps not this bad. So if you're the LIRR, how do you prepare for this most unwelcome guest? Well, you take the detailed plan you made to protect your infrastructure, and then you execute it.
When we're trying to button up the railroad, we can't have trains on the rails. We needed to get equipment out of West Side Yard and out of the Long Beach Yard. So we moved all of that equipment to higher ground.
And almost 600 crossing gates had to be put in lockdown mode. Thankfully, these measures brought LIRR trains through the storm with flying colors, but Sandy still imposed her will throughout the system. 20 electrical substations knocked out and about 400 downed trees on the railroad's right-of-way, not to mention tons of boats.
The Long Island Railroad workforce has just been tremendous. They've been dedicated, they've been professional, and they worked many hours to restore our service.
Within 24 hours of Sandy's departure, service was restored from Jamaica to Penn and to Brooklyn. Great Neck to Penn and Ronkonkoma to Penn came back in the next 24 hours. Service on the Babylon branch had to wait for 3 snapped light poles to be fixed, and a sea of downed trees in the Plandome area put service east of Great Neck on hold, but Cruz got it done. Removing trains from West Side and Long Beach before the storm turned out to be a very good idea. West Side turned into a sea of toppled signals, debris, and ballast everywhere, including the switches, all of which had to be suctioned or plucked out by hand. While Penn Station somehow was spared, 2 of the 4 Amtrak East River tunnels took on a devastating amount of water, destroying its signal system and leaving the LIRR with only 45% of its normal capacity. Some 2 weeks later, once all the tunnels were back, the temporary signal system could only offer the LIRR 80%. A normal schedule must wait until all those signals are repaired.
We've learned some things from Hurricane Sandy. We need to look at what can we do to harden our own infrastructure to protect places that are as important to our operation as the East River tunnels.
The entire Long Beach area was battered by Sandy, and what was left at the terminal when the waters receded were damaged switches, decimated switch motors, and all 4 substations destroyed and covered in sewage from the adjacent treatment plant. Long Beach branch service was knocked out for weeks while Cruz cleaned and decontaminated all those circuit breakers and motors. A diesel shuttle ran in the meantime, but all that hard work paid off with a return to electric train service 4 weeks later. Helena, what would you like to say to Long Island Railroad customers?
Thank you, customers, for your patience. You know, the first week after the storm, we did have modified schedules in. Trains were very crowded. We want to thank our customers. It's been a trying time for them on Long Island.
I'm Pete Palomero reporting for Transit News.
Thanks to the MTA's preparation and dedication, the city was back on the move within hours after the storm. The long nights and days of hard working nonstop is a true testament to the loyalty of our transit employees to our beloved city.
And the job is far from over. Much work remains to be done to bring service and stations back online. But you can be sure that the MTA will not stop until the job is finished.
The staff at Transit would like you to know that our hearts, thoughts, and prayers go out to those who have lost so much during the holiday season.
Absolutely. And that just about wraps up our coverage of Hurricane Sandy. If you have any questions, comments, or story ideas, you can email us at transit@nyct.com. I'm Pete Palomero. Thanks for riding, and have a wonderful holiday.
And I'm Ozzie Cruz. Thanks for watching, and have a Happy New Year.